Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So I was interviewing some people about divorcing and dating after divorce, and they recommended a book by Laura Friedman Williams. She's a native New Yorker, and she's the author of the recently published book, a memoir of sex and dating after a marriage ends. Sounds fascinating. So I thought I'd reach out to her and find out, a little bit about the backstory and the story itself. So Laura Williams, how are you? Welcome to our show.
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So tell me, why did you write the book?
Okay, good question. I started writing as I was dating. I had been married for a long time. I was in a 27-year relationship when it very suddenly ended. And when I did start to explore the dating world again and see what it was like to be single as a now, 47-year-old woman after having been 20, the last time I was single, I would share my experiences with women, friends who would tell their friends who would say, oh my God, can you do me a favor? Can you talk to my sister or my girlfriend? Because she's not doing this at all. She's not getting out. Please just give her some advice. Tell her it's not terrible. Tell her you're having fun. Let her know there's life after. And so I just started writing my stories, in a very anecdotal fashion. And after I had been doing that for a while, I realized, well, if I'm going to tell this story, I have to tell the whole story, which is that I was also really heartbroken. So there was, on the one hand,
by the marriage ending or by one of the dates?
No, by the marriage ending. So on the one hand, there was like this great new life I was leading as this single woman with this amazing sex life and dating all the time. And it was really exciting and fun. And on the other hand, I was also pretty heartbroken by the end of my marriage, and also trying to help my 3 children cope with the end of our family as they had known it. So both things were happening at the same time. And I felt like it was really important to be honest and show both things happening at the same time. They can both happen at the same time. There's room for grief and joy simultaneously.
Yeah. And so are both parts in the book?
Yeah, sure. It's all there. It's all there. The good, the bad, the ugly, the sad, the funny, the pitiful, the thrilling. I think once I decided to put it all out there, I put it all out there. And so I would say every facet of it is pretty well represented in there.
And what's the reception been from your kids, from your family, from the sister of whoever that recommended you chat with them?
Well, the hardest part for me was getting past the idea of my parents and my children reading the book. Everybody else, I thought, well, screw them. If they want to judge me, if they can't look at me in the eye ever again, that's on them. I don't need them. It's fine. My parents and my children, and even my ex-husband, not so much. I felt like I still really needed to them. And so my kids are many different ages. I have a 21-year-old, an 18 and a 10-year-old. And so, they all reacted differently. They're different people.
21 to 10, that's a big range.
Yeah, sure. I just kept going. So the 10-year-old, she's pretty sophisticated since she's the baby in a family of teenagers. She sort of hears everything and is wise beyond her years. And she understood that I would say to her, I'm writing this book and it is about my sex life and it's private. And that part of my life is private. So she got that. And my son got it. I would say that the hardest one was the 21-year-old. She really was embarrassed by my putting myself out there in such a public way. And I understood it. I felt badly that I embarrassed her, but I didn't feel that was enough to stop me. I didn't feel like it was fair to ask me not to tell my story because it made her feel uncomfortable.
Did you embarrass her about something she did or said, or just because you were sharing your own story?
I mean, just because, suddenly I'm like, I've been a PTA mom and a stay-home mom my whole life and a really dedicated mom. And now all of a sudden I'm writing about every sexual escapade I'm having in a, very short time frame. And I'm writing it graphically. And she found that really unseemly. Like, does everybody need to know this? And I thought, well, no one needs to know it, but I'm doing it. I'm going to do it.
The question that I had, and probably everyone has, when they read about your book is there sex after divorce?
Oh my God, so much. I mean, I would say, honestly, if there's a bright side to divorce, it's that you have the power to reinvent yourself. And that includes reinvent yourself sexually. So I have the best sex life I've ever had in my life, because all of the stresses that came with sex when I was young I mean, remember, I've been with the same man since I was 20. He was only my third sexual partner. So the sex before that, it was still pretty fumbling and awkward and also very exciting. You know, when you're a teenager, it's exciting, but you're also worried about getting pregnant. You're worried about STDs. You're worried about your parents walking in on you. So as a grown up, I didn't worry about those things. I mean, I worry about STDs. I'm very much a proponent of safe sex. I'll say that always. But I did not have to worry about getting pregnant anymore. And I didn't have to worry about disapproving parents. I did have to worry about disapproving children, but I just never had sex, you know, anywhere that they might be. So it was fine. And I felt so free and I love my body. I suddenly felt like, God, this body has served me well. It's, you know, I'm 50 now and I feel really strong. And I'm grateful for what my body can do. So not only is there sex after divorce, there's amazing sex to be had.
We're having a chat tonight with Laura Friedman Williams, who is the author of a book about sex after divorce. We're going to take a break and get more with her in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. I'm having fun tonight chatting with Laura Friedman Williams. She's the author of a book called Available, a memoir of sex and dating after a marriage ends. Laura, why available?
Well, actually, the original title of the book was Is This Too Much? And I really loved that title, and my editor did too. And then they wanted something a little bit catchier. And they went back into the book, the marketing team and the editor, and they said, you know, we realized that you use the word available a lot. And so we decided to capitalize on that. And when they said that to me, I thought, oh, totally, that's the perfect title. Because I do use that word a lot, as in I am available. I am available for life. I am available to have sex. I'm available to date. I am available to be things I haven't been able to be up until this point in my life. I'm open. I'm curious, and all of that to me, like available, suggests all those things that the openness and the curiosity that I think I've really embraced at this point in my life. I am very available.
Now, I understand that numerous different people were suggesting that you tell your story and share it, and that was going to be helpful. But why be so personal and graphic? What's the benefit of that, do you think?
That's a really good question. You know, originally when I was trying to decide what to do, and I had a conversation with my mother, and I said, I feel a little bit like I was trying to have her talk me out of writing the book. I was sort of presenting it to her so that she could say to me, you know what, Laura, don't do it. Like, this is going to embarrass your children. And it's just kind of like, why put yourself out there? And she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't take my bait. She was like, no, I think you should do it. And I said, well, it sort of feels to me like I'm exposing myself in a sort of Real Housewives way, like a reality TV way, like, but in a book instead of on a video. I'm exposing myself and letting people see things that really should be private. And she said, but you're not, you're writing. Writing is an art. That's different. You're not allowing camera crews into your house to film you, you know, like as you're fighting with your ex-husband or whatever. So I thought, okay. And then as I started doing it, I started to realize more and more, well, we are so closed in the ways that we talk about sex in midlife and beyond. And I wanted to just say, this is how it happens and what it looks like for me. It could look different for a lot of other people, but for me, this is what it looks like. Sometimes it looks really messy. Sometimes it's really sexy. Sometimes it's sad. You know, there's a million things of what it looks like, but sex is just a part of life. And I no longer wanted to put it in a little box that was secret and taboo. And I decided the things that we don't talk about are often because we're ashamed of them. And I'm not ashamed anymore to be a sexual person. So for me, I decided I'm going to put it all out there.
You said that you were heartbroken. Talk about that a little bit. Is marriage ending a disaster? Is it something to be ashamed of, or is it something that you can be happy and move on from?
All of the above. I definitely was more than heartbroken. I thought I would die from grief. I'd been with my husband since I was 20. I really loved him. I wanted to be with him forever. I never imagined that he would be unfaithful to me. It never even crossed my mind. So finding out that he had been unfaithful was the shock of my life. I hope it's the worst shock I ever get in my life. And I really thought, I don't know how I'm going to continue. I'm not going to be able to be a joyful person anymore. And I had been a relatively joyful, together, organized person. And I felt that part of me had just died with the end of our marriage. So there's a great amount of grief. I think divorce, when, so many people get divorced it's so common that I don't think anybody ever stops to think divorce is really a death. You are a couple, you are united, you have a way of doing things together. And when you are severed, it is like a death. It is like you have suffered a death. But then there is, birth on the other side of it. So there's both. I wouldn't go back to married life. I love being single at this point in my life. I feel like I've been given a gift, which is to live differently for the rest of my life. I never wanted anything but marriage and a family. And now I want something more. I want a life for myself too, beyond.
So you don't think you get married again ever?
I don't want to. And that doesn't mean I don't want to be in a relationship. It just means I don't want to get married. I don't think I even ever want to live with anybody again. I love having my own space. I love loading my own dishwasher and knowing that no one's going to mess it up. And that if I put something in the fridge, it's still going to be there when I come back later. Because 9 times out of 10, my kids aren't going to be interested in what I've done in there. They want their own things. So besides the kids, I never in my entire life have lived alone. This is the first time I've ever lived in a home by myself without another adult. And it was really upsetting and scary to me in the beginning. Everything overwhelmed me. The computer didn't work and I thought, oh my God, this is what my husband did, or a light bulb or whatever. But I figured it out and I love it. I find it liberating. I love being independent. And I just love having an identity now for myself that is more than just being a wife and a mother. I also have a private life and I'm a writer now. So I get those things. I get these extra things in my life. So I gained from divorce. I lost and then I gained.
Did you consider reconciling with your husband? Can you forgive?
I think so. Yeah. I think that people can forgive. I think for me, our marriage was dead in the water. It was like dead on arrival. As soon as I found out about the affair, I couldn't even look at him for a very long time. And like, it was as if the feelings had just been severed. So I didn't say, he moved out within 48 hours at my request. I didn't think it would be permanent. I thought this would be temporary to let me get my bearings and let the shock wear off. But the more time that went on, the more I kept thinking, gosh, you are at such a critical juncture. If you go back, if you go back into this marriage, then you're back and you're making a commitment to do that. I'm not going to mess around with my kids and say, Dad and I are back together. Now we're apart again. It was either, stay or go. And either one for me felt very permanent. So we went to couples therapy and we gave it a bit of a try. And I think it was clear to both of us very quickly that whatever we had was gone.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, I call it often like a beheading. It wasn't like this a beheading.
Oh, God.
It wasn't a slow fizzing out. It wasn't like a slow death. It was like 1, 2, like the head was cut off and it's done. There was no more feeling after that. I couldn't get over it. And that's not to say that other women can't or other men can't. I couldn't.
Has he read the book?
He's reading it.
What does he think about the book?
I think that he feels it's fair. I think he feels that I've been fair in my treatment of him and that it's really about myself. That he, of course, is written about quite a lot because I do write about the end of my marriage and what it felt like. And actually, one thing you had said was about feeling like a failure. I 100% felt like a failure when my marriage ended because I thought, well, what is wrong with me that somebody wouldn't want to stay with me? And especially like I thought I've all the trappings, like I try to stay fit and I color my hair and I dress nicely and I do all these things and that's not enough. So something is wrong with me inside, like where people don't know me. And he knows me. My husband knows me intimately in a way that most people don't know me. So if he knows me so intimately and doesn't want me anymore, I must be really damaged. Like nobody's going to want this. And that was a horrible feeling. And I'm somebody who really has a lot of confidence. I don't struggle with self-esteem. So I can't even imagine what that would be like for somebody who already suffers from a lack of self-esteem or lack of confidence. So he's reading the book. And I think that he feels I treated him fairly. I think I've tried to present the many facets of it. I also try to take responsibility for my own part in the end of our marriage, the parts I couldn't see at the time. So, he's very open to it. He seems, for the most part, the conversations we've had is that he's happy for me, that I'm happy. I think I think we feel there's still a lot of love between us, fraternal love, and we want each other to be happy and settled. And we still have these 3 children that are the focus of our lives together and will be for some time. Our daughter's 10, so we have a long way to go still.
Was the divorce difficult financially from a litigation standpoint?
Um, it's not great. I mean, it's it's hard. It's like I think that we both feel like we are scared going forward. It's a lot to support multiple households and two kids in college this year. But I'll say that the thing it's done for me is it's really lit a fire under me. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 20 years, almost 20 years. And I always thought if I got back to work, and I thought I would work for him. He has a business, and I always thought I'd go back and work for him. And he used to say to me, Laura, you're not even interested in what I do. When I talk to you about it, your eyes roll back in your head. Why would you come work for me? I thought, well, because then I can make my own hours, and I'll just do a little of this and that, whatever you need around the office. So now I feel so motivated. I want so badly now to earn my own money and make my own way in the world and establish myself for my own passions. I have so many passions and interests. So I actually, as much as there was, the pain of it financially, the motivation it has provided for me to have my own earnings has outweighed that.
So, 2 minutes ago, you described the sense of a failure, of someone not wanting you, and the person who knew you better than anyone else rejecting you, and that was terrible, even for you, someone with a very high level of self-esteem and confidence. But now it sounds like you're actually far better off, and you're a better person, and you're happier with who you are, and you're like the phoenix that's rising from the ashes.
I believe it. I believe that to be true. I think that I feel like just independent for the first time in my life. I feel like, oh, guess who gets to choose this, Laura? You do. Guess who gets to choose the new wallpaper in the new apartment? Or, guess who gets to choose if they're just going to eat ice cream for dinner? You do. It's all you now. The remote control in your hand for Netflix tonight, that's on you. And, I do date and I enjoy being with men. I've already said I'm a very sexual person, and having sexual relationships is very important to me. So that is a very important aspect of my life. But I also know, like, if a relationship's not working out for me, I'm going to walk out tomorrow and start over again. There's nothing tying me down anymore. And I didn't think I would feel free and liberated because I thought I had what I wanted. But in hindsight, I think I felt a little trapped by it. And I sort of fell into the life that I'd expected to live and thought, oh, okay, well, I guess this is married life. We bicker sometimes. We don't connect that often anymore. We're busy. I don't really have much of my own life. My life is really for my husband and my kids, but I guess this is just how it goes. And so, all right, carry on, make friends, be a good mom, and just keep going. But then suddenly when the narrative changed, I realized I was very unfulfilled as a human being.
Interesting. You say, all these negative things. You were unfulfilled. You were just there for him and the kids, et cetera. And yet you said a couple of minutes ago that you loved him. And you were devastated by the infidelity and surprised by it.
I think both those things are true. I think that I loved him and I love him still in a completely non-sexual way. But I think that we had changed dramatically since the time that we got together when we were 20. We met as juniors in college. We started dating. And I think that we went in very different directions emotionally and in terms of what we wanted out of life. And I think that I was very complacent. So I liked my life a lot. I liked, I liked my home. I liked the rhythm of my days. I appreciated all those things. But when I look back at it, I think I wasn't, I think I was complacent. I think it was like, this is what I expected to have, and I have it, and I have no reason to complain. What could I possibly complain about? I have a husband who loves me. I have 3 kids who are healthy. I have a beautiful home. I have a house in the country. How am I to complain? I was not one of these women. I will say, I know women and I admire them who say, after many years of marriage, decades of marriage, they find themselves in midlife and say, this is not what I want anymore. And I want something different. And I admire that because that takes so much courage and self-awareness. That wasn't me. But now I could see how it benefited me, even though I wasn't the one driving the bus.
So was the infidelity and divorce actually a gift to you?
Absolutely.
Really?
I believe that to be 100% true. I say it in my book, and I've said it out loud before. I'm grateful that my husband had an affair, because if he hadn't, I wouldn't have left the marriage. It had to be absolute crisis. It had to be something where there was like a tree falling on top of me. I was not going to walk out of I was not going to shake up my family.
Are
And
we naturally born for monogamy for their lifetimes?
I mean, personally, I don't think so, but that's not to say I don't think that people do it really successfully. I just think it's really hard to achieve. And I don't think we know that. When we tether ourselves to another human being for life, especially when we're very young, we have no idea what the rest of our lives are going to look like. We don't know what we're going to feel like as we move through lives and our lives, and what we're going to feel like by the time we hit our midlife. So it feels almost destined to fail, or like destined that you're going to have to keep working at it. And that was the part that I didn't understand. I just took it for granted. Like, we'll get married and we'll have kids and we'll just hum along in our lives and everything will just sort of work itself out. And we know we love each other, so that'll be enough. And I remember even saying sometimes, like, okay, we have no time together right now. It's all about the kids, but eventually the kids will go off and we'll have more time together and they'll be fine. Everything will just be fine.
Was your sex life good or bad?
It was fine. It was fine. Like once a week, Saturday nights, I was like, we'd scheduled sex. Like I was so tired most nights and I didn't always want to feel that I had to be on. So I would say, like, let's just have sex on Saturday nights. It started Wednesdays and Saturdays, and then it fell down to just Saturdays, because I was like, let's just know when we're having it. So there's no pressure on the other night. So I don't have to feel like I have to come up with excuses. But then I know Saturday night, like I can't get overtired. I'm going to have to perform. So that's not very sexy. The sex itself was fine. There was nothing, it wasn't bad. It wasn't anything to write home about, but it sustained us, marginally.
And there is sex after divorce. So you're going to have to tell us a little bit about your experiences of dating and the first time and what that's all like with someone new after 20 something years of marriage. But we're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Laura Friedman Williams, author of a fascinating book called Available, a memoir of sex and dating after a marriage ends, in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. I'm having a lot of fun tonight chatting with Laura Friedman Williams. She's a native New Yorker and she's author of the recently published book, Available, a memoir of sex and dating after a marriage ends. This is her first book, and it's exploring various roles we take on through the course of our lives and how they come to define us. It's been featured in the Financial Times, Cosmopolitan UK, Vogue UK, and the Daily Mail. She lives in downtown Manhattan with her 3 children, and she's recently been in Bellport, a town that I know and love well, and she's now in the Jersey Shores, and she's been dating. So tell me, if you could, Laura Williams, what was the first date like? How did you arrange the first date?
It just sort of fell into me at my lap, I'll say. Like I had decided that I was going to go out, and it was very spontaneous. I didn't plan it. So I didn't have like a posse with me. I didn't have a wingman. I just was like, you know what? It's time to go out. I can't live like this anymore. I'm living like I'm dying. And I have to see what life is like on the other side of this. There has to be something more than this, than just slowly dying because my marriage has ended. So I went to a bar by myself in a small town in upstate New York, where I was spending the summer. And I sat at a bar by myself and ordered a drink and thought, I never felt more ridiculous in my entire life. Everybody here is like 70. And I don't know what I was thinking. I was giving myself a little talk like, well, Laura, you don't even watch that much TV. And yet you seem to think the world is a rom-com, that you're just going to like walk into a bar and have like a cute meet up with somebody. But I did. Suddenly there was this very tall, handsome man standing near me, and I like made a big commotion with my chair to get his attention. And it worked. And I thought, okay, I see how this is done. And then he brushed up against me when I stood up and he said, your hair smells amazing. And I just burst out laughing. I couldn't believe it. Like, this is happening. This is how it happens. It actually is like a movie. It's like, I'm in a romance novel right now. I can't believe it's this cheesy, but okay, whatever. I'll take it. I'm going to run with this. So we ended up leaving together, and he wanted to get something to eat, and we went around the corner so he could eat. And I don't know. It was like I was possessed. He had asked me if I would eat or have a drink with him. And I said, no, I won't. I'm not hungry and I can't have another drink, but are you really that hungry? And he looked at me and he got my meeting, like, here, devour me. You don't need food. You've got me. And he kissed me and took me back to his hotel room. And again, I went into the bathroom. I gave myself a little pep talk. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, you this is it. You're like a virgin and you're going to lose your virginity tonight. And you can do this. You can do this. You have to get through this. It's going to hurt. It's going to feel sad. It might feel like someone is knifing you in the heart, but you've got to do it. And then I went out. He took his turn in the bathroom. And while he was in there, I got really panicked that he would come out, and under my dress, I was wearing a strapless dress. I had a very bulky and unsexy strapless bra. And I was scared that he was going to undress me and see it. And I wanted to get it out of the way. So I actually ended up just taking off all my clothes, and I folded them in a pile because I didn't want them to get wrinkled ridiculously. And he came out of the bathroom, and I was just standing there by the bed, completely naked. And we just looked at each other, and I thought, oh shit. So sorry. I said, oh shoot, this is not how it's done. Like, I just thought this is what women did. And he was like, he just sort of looked shocked. And I said, is this too much? And he said, no, it's definitely not too much. And we had sex. And I did say to him, finally, I confessed. I said, this is my first time being with a man who's not my husband. And he said, okay, he understood that it was weird for me, but it was weird, not bad. It turned out to be amazing. I mean, first of all, I felt like it was that kind of sex I had, back in my early years, where it was just thrilling. It was raw. I felt like I was just being, like the word I used before, devoured by somebody who really wanted me. And I wanted him too. And it really, like, it was just like a light switch went off on me in my head. Like, I like sex. I like having sex. I haven't liked it this way in a long time. And I like this. And I really enjoyed being with him. And I was lucky because he was very nice to me. He was kind and he was compassionate for the role that I had found myself in. And then I went home and we said goodbye. We didn't exchange phone numbers. I'd never in my life had a one night stand. So this was my first one at the age of 47. And I felt, the only word I can use is I felt alive. I felt like somebody had just put new batteries in me or watered a wilting plant. I felt like I was that one sexual experience, I felt it brought me back to life. I just wanted more of it.
Really? You just wanted more of it? What a story.
I just wanted more. Yeah, I just wanted more. I called every girlfriend I had. I have an amazing team of girlfriends who were keeping me afloat. And I called them all and told my story, and they loved it. They laughed at all the right spots and cheered me on and toasted me. And they were like, okay, you did it. You did it. You can do it now. Everything works. There's nothing you have to worry about your body. Like, I thought maybe it's falling apart. Nobody knows. I mean, who's seen my body? Who's seen my parts except for my husband and my gynecologist for the past 30 years. So I don't know what it's like, but it's been okayed now.
It's been okayed.
Yeah. It's got the FDA approval, and I'm going to see what I can do. And I just wanted more. And the next day I actually drove back to the hotel in the morning. I wanted to see if his motorcycle was still there. I just sort of couldn't believe it had happened. And I felt like I needed this evidence. Like, the night happened and it was gone. It was a Sunday by then. And he was on a motorcycle trip for the weekend, and his motorcycle was gone and the parking lot was empty. And I was like, okay, that happened. It happened. You remember that it happened. It happened. And I started to just sort of look for opportunities everywhere I went after that. And there weren't many of them, I'll say that. I was in upstate New York, which is very rural. I was with my daughter, who was like 7 years old, and she was going to day camp. So it wasn't like I didn't have time. I didn't have availability. I didn't have men at my, at my beck and call. But I set my bar low, in the sense of saying, like, I could meet somebody and he's not somebody I would normally want to be in a relationship with. We might not normally, like, if you went through all the things like values or lifestyle, whatever you would think. I just sort of thought, like, is this a man who could want me and who will sleep with me? Then he'll be fine. And will he treat me kindly and respectfully? That's all I need. And so I just started having a lot of sex with a lot of different men. And I really was, I was just exploring, honestly, what it meant to be a woman in middle age, having this new sex life, what it meant to be a single woman, what it meant to be a mom and have this private life. And also I was interrogating the men I was with. I wanted to know what they thought. I wanted to know what they were interested in relationships, what they liked in sex, what was sexy to them, what was appealing, what wasn't. It was like I was on a sort of science experiment of my own design.
What did they say?
I think most men really like to have sex and can have a lot of it. And I think a lot of them feel that sex is often less satisfying for women. And so their experience of women, and many of them were coming out of their own marriages and felt that it wasn't so easy for their wives to enjoy having sex. And for me, I do know, I would say the one thing I apparently never lost is I do know my body really well. I know what works for it, and I know what I enjoy feeling. So I think that it was mutually beneficial to most of us, because I think that they were really appreciative of being with a woman who loved her sexuality and was not shy about her body. You know, I remember once being at a man's apartment and walking around naked, like looking for some clothes or something. And he said, I love how comfortable you are with your own body. You're like, you never try to cover up. And I thought, yeah, it's not that I think I've got the like best body. I'm just very comfortable with it. And I love that it's mine. And that it's so powerful. So
But
I
have
learned
you always
that.
been that way, or is this something that only came to you after the divorce and your sexual escapades?
I think it really came to me later. I don't think I don't think I felt that way at all. I don't think I felt so powerful and strong. I think I felt like my body, you know, I think I always felt a little bit like I didn't like the proportions of it, or I wish that I had, you know, a flatter chest like some of the other girls who could wear certain kinds of clothes without bras, or I'm really short. You know, I'm not really short, but I'm 5'3". I wanted to be taller. I wanted to have longer legs. I wanted to have a more defined derriere. I mean, you know, I could stand in front of a mirror and criticize my body all day long. And then suddenly I didn't anymore. I looked at my body totally different. I didn't look at it as like, this is too big and this is too small and this is too flabby. I looked at it like, look at you. You birthed 3 children and everything is still intact. And your body, you know it really well. It works really well. And I just felt like grateful for it. And like I was going to stop being so critical of it all the time. And so that's what I did. And in doing so, I think I actually became less critical of, you know, other people's bodies as well.
Right.
You know, I realized it's like everybody's got their own stuff. A body is just housing, you know, so much stuff inside that we all feel and have to go through. So I
Well, what
learned to
advice
really.
have you got for people, you know, that have gone through a divorce and are thinking about dating? Is it to go to a bar and pick up a guy on a motorcycle? Like what recommendations have you got?
It's not the worst advice. I wouldn't say don't do that. I mean, if you have the opportunity, by all means, go to a bar and find yourself
What was
a
his
gentleman. I name him Jack because you give everybody a pseudonym in the book.
Okay.
I don't call anybody. He was number 1. Basically, that's his name is number 1.
Number 1. Okay.
The men in my book get numbers. They don't get names. And so what would I advise? I mean, I think what's really hard is just to make that first move and to get yourself out. And I don't think it's necessary to go to a bar and find a man to sleep with. I think you could just go out and learn how to sit by yourself. And that's pretty powerful too. For me, when I first started doing that, I did feel very invisible. Like I thought, why would anybody ever see me? Like I felt so much like just part of a backdrop. And I don't know, I think it's really hard for anybody, for men or women, to put themselves back out there. And I think you just have to sort of fake it till you make it. You know, if you don't think that you're going to attract attention, or you don't think people are going to notice you, just put on a smile, do your best, wear something nice, wear something that makes you feel pretty or sexy or bold or whatever you need to get through it. And just sort of, it's like diving into cold water. It's going to feel a little cold.
Did you get on dating apps?
I did. That was not like the time of my life, but I don't not recommend them. I recommend them with caution. I would say I did go on Tinder and Hinge. Those were the 2 I went on. I didn't try any other ones. And I had some nice dates from them, and I met some really nice people. I also met some real creeps. So I don't think I was so good at weeding out the creeps from the gems. And even with the gems, I would say like they weren't people that I ended up staying with or, you know, dating for a long time, but there were certainly very nice men who were very respectful and cordial on there. And I respect, and there was mutual respect. They just weren't for me. And then there's a lot of people that don't behave well online, and I as sexual as I am, and as much as I like to have sex and talk about it openly, I also feel there's a certain decorum. Like if I'm getting to know you and we're talking about books or places that we like to travel, I don't want to talk to you about my feelings about oral sex. Like, that's just not a place that I don't want that brought into the conversation. I just think there's like a time and a place for it. So that kind of turned me off with a lot of men. The conversation would go from like totally benign, like how old are your kids, to, you know, the sexual acts they wanted to perform on you in the first 5 minutes. And I would just politely decline or just stop answering, because that wasn't for me. So, you know, dating apps get a really bad rap. I understand why. I think a lot of people hide behind the anonymity that they can get in a dating app. And so they feel that they're not accountable and they're free to behave badly. And that exists. But, you know, just, you got to weed those people out. There's certainly lots of nice people on there too, caring people that are coming out of marriages or have never been married and just want to find somebody to connect with. So I don't think
matchmaking services.
No, I've never done that. I think that'd be fun, but I just have never done it.
Did you have an age range to date?
You know, not really. I definitely, the youngest person I slept with was significantly younger, you know, probably in his early 30s. I knew that was just going to be a one night stand and it was really fun. But I knew it wasn't going to be a relationship. I'm actually dating somebody now who is older than I am. He's 15 years older than I am. And again, like I never really thought about age. I didn't, you know, I thought less in terms of age and more about where we were in our lives. You know, that's what I've looked for as I've been with people. Like, I am in a place, like I'm looking for somebody who wants to spend time with me when we have free time, but doesn't demand all my free time, understands that my kids are going to come first, that if my kids need me, I'll drop everything for them. That when I have them with me, I'm not going to parse them out to other people to be with him. So, I look less in terms of age and more just in terms of, I guess, lifestyle and availability and accessibility and independence. You know, I definitely want to be with a man who's very independent and has his own thing, so that it's not all about me. And I want the same. I want him to understand that I have a lot going on too, and it's not going to be all about him.
Has your sexual repertoire changed?
With him or just in general?
In general.
You know, not totally. Like the things that I didn't do, I guess I'm a little more open-minded. What I'll say is I think that for me, sex was very linear. Like the goal was to get to the finish line, both of you, you know, hopefully at the same time, so that you could both sort of like be done at the same time. And it was and when I say it's linear, it was like there was the foreplay, there was the sex, and then it was done. You know, there was orgasms and it was done. And that was the end of it. And I don't really see it that way anymore. I don't see that there has to be a finish line to have a really positive sexual experience. Like I really, it's not just about getting to the orgasm anymore. It's about the process and about trying new things and about feeling really comfortable with somebody, so that I can, you know, do whatever I want to do or try new things without feeling embarrassed or ashamed or awkward and self-conscious.
We're chatting tonight with Laura Friedman Williams. She's a author of the recently published book, Available, a memoir of sex and dating after a marriage ends. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back for some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. What a fascinating chat we're having tonight on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960, with Laura Friedman Williams. She's an author of the recently published book, Available, a memoir of sex and dating after a marriage ends. Laura, maybe I could ask you to come back to this issue of monogamy for a second. I read a fascinating book called Erotic Capital, and it said that there was a male sexual deficit because females didn't enjoy sex as much as men, and so therefore men always wanted more, and so therefore men were always unhappy. And so because of that, monogamy is very difficult to have exist. What do you think?
That's a really interesting perspective. I've never heard it put that bluntly before. I think that there are a lot of women who also have a hard time maintaining monogamy, not just men. I do find in a lot of long-term relationships, the ones that I know, it is more common that women want to have sex less often than men. Every once in a while, I hear of a relationship, you know, a long married relationship where the woman is the one who has more of a sexual desire. So I think the problem is that women are largely raised not to feel that they can be sexual creatures and also be like doting mothers or, good wives. Like, I think that there is a sort of sexuality that is naturally tamped down in women over time. And so it's hard to be so on for your family all the time, to be so needed and so on. And, this sort of like what in your, for me was sort of a martyr. Like, I think I'd often equated motherhood with martyrdom, just putting everybody's needs before my own. And then how do you become this sexual vixen, at night? How do you transform into something totally different? And I think for a lot of women, their minds have to be in the right place. It's not just physical, it's also emotional. I think that for a lot of women, there's a much more emotional component to sex. I actually read a really interesting book about this subject called Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel. And it was just fascinating. It was really about this notion of that it is so hard to maintain a really positive sex life in a long relationship, and the many traps that people fall into. And a lot of it is about parenting and working and being tired and being needed. And in my case, I feel a lot like I think I had always liked sex when I was young, but when I had my kids, it's like they're always on you. They're nursing and then they're hanging on you, or they're sleeping. Many of them can't sleep unless they're sleeping on top of you. Even now, my 10-year-old is still climbing into my bed and doesn't even know it. She just walks in her sleep and there she is in my bed. So it's very hard. How do you give to your children in the way that you want to? How do you nurture and then also turn into like a vixen come nighttime? I don't have the answer to that. I think it's for me, it was a very big challenge.
It sounds like you have a reasonable amount of sex and with a reasonable amount of partners. A generation ago, maybe even today, that would be frowned upon. People would, slut shame and say negative things. What do you think about that?
I think they say it now. I think it's really, I think that a lot of people feel that sex is something to be done in the privacy of your bedroom with one man that you have married and are mating with for life. And by the way, more power to you. Do it. I'm not judging you. I just think it's okay to also normalize being a very sexual woman in her 50s who can do whatever she wants to do, or in her 20s or 30s. I mean, I'm not promoting monogamy for any age. I think that there's so much flawed with this happily ever after marriage notion. And I personally won't even commit to monogamy now. Even like being in a relationship with somebody I care about and I love, I always tell him, like, I don't want to be tied down. I don't want to feel that I can't have a sexual experience with somebody that I want to now, because this is so new to me. This state of like feeling so free and sexually open is new to me. And if I want to have a one night stand with somebody, I maintain the right to do that. And obviously the man I'm dating, he doesn't have to stick around for it if he doesn't like it, but he's okay with it because he understands that it's just a part of me. It's not a reflection of him not being enough. It just has to do with myself. So I
can imagine a lot of guys being okay with that, but are a lot of females okay with that? Do you think? If a guy said exactly what you said, I love you, I'm enjoying dating you, I want to be with you, but I reserve my right to be non-monogamous.
I mean, I don't know. I think it really depends on how they do it. In our case, there's boundaries, like I'm not going to date somebody else. And if I do sleep with somebody else, I do tell him that I've done it. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. I do think that there's like women, I think a lot of women would have our time with that. I would be okay with it. And I am okay with it because I'm not going to be a hypocrite. He can do what he wants to do if I can do what I want to do.
If you had a chance to talk to the teenager or the 20-year-old before you were married, what would you say to that younger version of Laura Friedman Williams?
Slow down. Don't grow so fast. You will be an adult someday. You do not need to be an adult now. I think that young Laura wanted a very stable and comfortable family, and like the nuclear family, the home life, the picket fence, the whole 9 yards. And I wish I'd given myself a chance to be something other than just those things. I have no regrets. I mean, I love my family so much and I love being a mother, and it is still the most important role for me. But I wish that I could just have embraced being a young single woman without feeling the need to say, I will get married, I will have children, I will have this all done by the time I'm 30 years old. And I felt that pressure. And that pressure was not from my family, it was from myself.
Laura Friedman Williams, author of the recently published book, Available, a memoir of sex and dating after a marriage ends. Thank you so much for joining us. If people want to grab your book, how can they do that?
It will be, it's available right now as an audio. I actually narrated the audio version. So you can go on Audible or anywhere you get your audios and download that. It's also available as an ebook right now, and it will be for sale in the United States and Canada starting on September 14th. You can find it at Amazon or wherever else you get your books.
Laura Friedman Williams, thank you so much for joining us. A real pleasure. The author of the book, Available, a memoir of sex and dating after a marriage ends. That's our show for tonight, everyone. Thanks for joining us.